Good morning, everyone, and welcome to episode 21. We are talking to the magnificent Sarah Valentini. She is the director, a lead homeopath, as well as the founder of the Family Apothecary. Now, this is an amazing establishment for children who have either who are autistic, who have PANS and PANDAS, or who have other neurological issues. And I'm just going to go live over here. And so what that basically means is that there is a space for parents to go to ensure that they are getting their needs met, that their child is having their needs met. And so, because it can be really scary when you get a diagnosis of autism and really don't know where else to go, because typically what usually happens is you get the diagnosis and, most people will push speech and OT, right? That is like the top thing that autistic children need. But in fact, there is so much more that a child who has autism, or is, sorry, I should say is autistic, needs other than speech and OT. And I'm definitely not saying that they don't need it. They do need it, but there are so many other things. And so I'd love to welcome Sarah. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Nat. I'm super excited to be here and of course to talk to you, because I know what you're doing is really amazing in bringing so much awareness and support to the parents, to the mothers. Like, this is just such an important piece, I think.
Absolutely. Because so many, not just mums, but I feel more dads are starting to reach out now more than ever as well, and just saying that, like, the overwhelm is a real thing, right? Carer burnout is a real thing, and we need to, like I often say, is that you get this diagnosis, you need to put your oxygen mask on first before you can even possibly help your children. And I think that is such an amazing metaphor to be using when we step into going into a diagnosis of autism. So for people who are listening, can you just tell us a little bit about your journey and what led you to go into homeopathy?
I mean, so I had a wonderful personal experience with homeopathy when I lived in the Netherlands in my 20s, and I was very sensitive to medicines and medications, and I got sick, and my boyfriend at the time went to the chemist, and in the Netherlands, homeopathy's everywhere, and
Oh,
he brought back these remedies, and so I took them, and I just got better. And so I became really fascinated, and I was always interested in natural medicine. But really, it was when my oldest son was born, and he wasn't sleeping. He had a lot of issues with nappy rash, and my thyroid went completely out because he wasn't sleeping. So I went and saw a
mm,
homeopath, which sorted us out, really,
yeah.
which was just amazing. And so I became really interested. But also, my son, he had a lot of, later on, actually, he's not diagnosed, but he definitely had PANS and PANDAS, and probably
Mm,
some kind, and he's definitely on the autism spectrum. So that was kind of my introduction. Even though I didn't really know what that was there, I became super interested in studying homeopathy from that perspective, because with homeopathy, we address behavioral symptoms of the mind, of the family history, of the ancestors, of what's inherited, as well as the physical symptoms and what might be causing that. So it really kind of propelled this really deep passion for understanding kids that have different needs.
yeah.
Um, and I have two children. My younger son is also autistic, and my kids they're pretty good, but there's little things that you'll notice, sensory things or
Yes.
fears, anxieties, that kind of thing, that just makes it difficult for them sometimes.
Mhm.
And so then I just became super passionate about the amazing things that homeopathy can do, just to help these kids through these anxiety, through, whether they're going to school or not. But if they go to school, like, how can they get through the separation anxiety or the overwhelm,
Mhm.
even down to things like toilet training, because that can be challenging for some parents, or
Yes.
generally rage episodes, all of those kinds of things. Homeopathy can be so brilliant to help bring those heightened emotions down.
Definitely. I hear a lot of this from my clients, my friends, family members, talking about these moments where their child is so dysregulated. And
Mm,
then often what happens is then the mum or dad becomes then dysregulated, and then the whole house is just in chaos,
yeah,
right? So
right.
it's like a domino effect. And so, it's so hard to stay regulated when your child is so dysregulated. It's an art form, I tell you, it really is.
It sure
Um,
is. Yeah.
and so, in terms of the role that homeopathy plays
Mhm.
with a child who has autism, how does that really come about? Like, in terms of homeopathy, how are we better supporting children with autism as well as PANS and PANDAS?
So what both all of these acronyms, the ASD or PANS, PANDAS, ADHD, even, we know there's a lot of crossovers. There's number one, a dysregulated immune system,
Mhm.
and a dysregulated nervous system in all across all of these diagnoses. And there's a lot of input into what causes a dysregulated immune system and a dysregulated nervous system. We have in our world today a lot of toxins that we're
Mm.
exposed to, and this starts fairly early on. It even starts in utero, and
Yep.
and even parents with the best intentions to eat organic food and all of that kind of things, we're just exposed in this
Yeah.
world.
Yep.
And you go out and you walk on the grass at the soccer pitch or at the playground or whatever, and that grass is sprayed, and that spray is on your shoes, or you'll sit in the grass, and they're lovely things to do, but we're just exposed.
Mm.
And all those things can lead to a dysregulated nervous system. There's even things like, EMFs, which are electromagnetic frequencies that can, for these sensitive souls, they can
Yeah.
really scramble the nervous system, too much
Mm.
exposure. Um, not all kids are affected like that, but many can be.
Yep.
And so we have all these exposures, and then the immune system gets a little confused, and it doesn't know how to detox these toxins very well, and it doesn't know how to respond to an illness very well, and so these illnesses can stay stuck in the system. That relates to PANS, PANDAS, but there's just so many crossovers between all of these diagnoses
Yep.
that I really do put them all together, and we can define them slightly differently in each way. But I see children with autism that actually really respond well when I work with strep in the body, for example.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeast, for example, yeast is huge, um,
Mhm.
and candida. This is huge in these kids, and that yeast and candida help, often contributes to lack of spatial awareness. They'll be wanting to eat only a certain, like white foods or carbs. They don't poo properly. They don't listen. They seem spacey.
Mhm.
They can seem also a little bit drunk
Yep.
sometimes with
Yep.
these kids.
Yep.
So, and these kids are all susceptible to yeast overgrowths, because actually with all of these toxins in the world, our normal boundaries and barriers are being broken down,
Mhm.
because that's what the toxins do. Really, they affect the secretory IgA in the gut lining, which is
Mhm.
our protection between the food that comes in and the food that gets absorbed into the bloodstream, for example.
Yeah.
A
Yeah.
lot of these kids have really low secretory IgA, which we can see on stool testing. So really, this is what homeopathy does, is looks at all of these things and helps to bring a child back into balance. And we do that, it's not by tons of supplements and herbs and things like that, even though those things can be great. They can also be uh, quite a big mission for a lot of
Mm.
parents to keep up with, and
Yep.
expensive. But we do that with homeopathic remedies, which are, we either have them like, this is one, we have them in drops, and it's a few drops, and it's all about helping to realign and address what's happening in the body. And it's quite amazing because, sometimes it doesn't happen all the time, because sometimes there's a lot of layers of toxins and latent infections that the body's not resolving to work through.
Mhm.
Sometimes we'll give a remedy from a plant, mineral, animal, whatever we've made the remedy from, and immediately the parent might see a softening in that child. Something
Mm.
that's really hard before, like getting their shoes on just to get out the door,
Yep.
suddenly they just do it, and it's so hard to explain. It's almost kind of magical when you see like that. It's like that stress thing just leaves them, or that part that's really, really tough just kind of falls off them. And it's not to say that there's not other challenges from there, but sometimes you can see that just from one dose of a remedy. And I've seen that in my own kids, and I've seen that in thousands of other families too, where it's just like we get to that point where it's just like, oh no, that's not a problem anymore.
Mm.
And
Yep.
I just really believe these kids are such beautiful souls. They really are.
Oh,
But there's, just sometimes to do these daily, things is challenging for them because they're sensitive and they're picking up on a lot, and it can be a lot to go out in the world and be with all the sounds and the noises and everything that they're picking up. And so it's not about, like, to me, like from where I come from, for me, it's about making things easier. It's not about taking away or changing these kids completely, because I think they're actually an amazing gift,
yeah.
for many of us.
Yes.
I mean, I actually think they're a real gift for our society,
Mhm.
but
Definitely.
it's about just making things a little easier for them when they
Yep.
go out. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I was so many things that you were saying about that. So, my son did the yeast protocol, and and this was back when he was probably around, I think, about 4 years old, and we were
Mhm.
toileting at that point in time. And I remember, as it was so hard, it was so difficult to try and get him to do the protocol. But then when we actually got through it, it was like the fog lifted, and
Yeah.
he just magically just started going to the toilet, and I was like,
Yeah.
what has just happened? What I didn't, and the only way I can describe it is like moving through the fog, like, and being able to get out of it, and the fog lifting, and just being able to see clearly, like, okay, well, this is what we've got to do. So
Yeah.
I can totally appreciate that. In terms of toxins, are you a big advocate for not wearing shoes in the house?
Um, and yeah, I am quite. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. If you
I
can leave
really,
them at the door. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, because we just like you were saying before about the grass being sprayed, and then walking that into the house, and like, what else are you bringing in, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's yeah, it's pretty
Right.
scary from that point of view.
It is. And
Um,
we also have to live in the world, right? Like, when,
yeah,
it's not like we don't want to have to be like avoiding all the things, because that, brings us to another kind of diagnosis. It could really. But
mhm,
and the thing is, one thing that's really important with all of these kids as well is making sure that there's the detox pathways are open, so that they are being able to process things in a way. And sometimes that can be really difficult right at the start of treatment, but that's the goal too, that you
mhm,
can actually, like a lot of kids as well can be really mold sensitive. That's
yes,
a huge issue too. And when, the ideal goal of homeopathic treatment is that they get to a point where they're not that mold sensitive, and they can be in the world, because mold is everywhere.
yeah,
Not that we want it to be, and especially not the toxic molds, but we still want children to be able to be in the world and
mhm.
cope with the things. So that's the goal. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And so, do you see a lot of children come into your office that are like, have a lot of behavioral aggression, or have a lot of behavioral issues that parents are just like, I don't know what else to do. Like, I'm at the end point. And
Oh, yeah.
so then, yeah, okay. So what talk us through what that happens? Because I've got so many clients like that who are
Yeah.
just not sure what the next step is. How do
Yeah.
you then make sure that you're looking after your child as well as yourself, and protecting yourself for fear that you
Yeah.
might get hurt or harmed. So
Yes.
yeah.
Yes. And that's often when that's often when, I mean, obviously there's a really dysregulated nervous system, but often when it's getting to violence, that there's an underlying infection at play, and that kind of heads into the PANDAS
Mhm.
diagnostic area. But one of the things, I mean, I see that so commonly, like rage and aggression. And that's like, these kids are often, there's a lot of fear often,
Mhm.
and perhaps there's sometimes psychosis.
Mhm.
Um, and this can really, really affect how they are. But we have to also remember that they're not doing that on purpose. That's like how they're experiencing their world at this
Yeah. Yep.
time,
Yep.
and it's not personal.
Mhm.
I've had so many PANS and PANDAS kids who'll say, "I hate you," to their parents, and like terrible things that you never want to hear your
Yeah.
child say, or even like, "I want to die." I've heard that many, many times.
Yep. Yep.
And
I've had clients tell me their children have said that as well. Yeah.
yeah, yep, a lot of them do. And it's so alarming as a parent. But there's a lot of remedies. Like with homeopathy, we're very specific. So it's not like someone comes with rage and we give this kind of remedy. There's like we
Yeah.
could give all of these remedies. And as a homeopath, it's all about understanding the individual nature of this child.
Mhm.
In saying that, we do have a number of remedies that are indicated for rage and attacking, people. But also, that's often when I'll look, is there an infection at play that this kid is resolving, which is what PANDAS is, that where these infections and a disordered immune response to the presence of an infection causes them to flip over into PANS or PANDAS or autoimmune encephalitis, it's also called, where, they're not quite seeing things straight. So this is all about bringing down inflammation in the body and recognizing that individual experience for that child. So
Mhm.
I had a child, I can't remember, probably 4 or 5 years ago. He came to see me, and at that time he was in psychosis. He was like a 5-year-old boy. He was taking knives to school
Okay.
because he thought he was going to be attacked.
Mhm.
He threatened to kill his teacher was pregnant, and he threatened to stab her belly.
Yeah.
It's
Okay.
a 5-year-old boy. Like, it's quite extreme.
Yeah.
And because he thought that the whatever was in her belly was going to harm her. But of course,
Mhm.
to her, it was just a threat.
Yeah.
So, and this kid had also, I mean, it was obviously complex. But
Mhm.
now he goes to school. He's actually playing in a sports team with other
Yeah.
kids
Right.
because he can read the
Mm.
play. He's getting along, like he's not dysregulating as much anymore.
Yep.
And we had to kind of unpick a lot of threads with this child, because that's what it's like. It's like, especially with something that complicated, they come and it's like a big ball of thread. And, as a homeopath, I'm kind of like pulling out the threads. Where do we start? Um,
Mhm.
he was also having seizures and things like that, and he's not having them anymore.
Yeah. Right. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, there was a lot involved in this treatment. It was kind of over 3 years, but
Mhm.
now it's just brilliant to see him. He's still autistic,
Yeah.
but he's not. He is functioning
Mm.
in school, in life.
Yeah.
And he's just a beautiful boy and connected to his mum, and he's sleeping now, and all of those things. So, it's that was a bumpy road. That was one of the cases where I thought, oh gosh, this one's a tough one.
Yeah.
But the mum was super committed, and we
Mhm.
just got him to this place. So it was like, that's why I do this job, really.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. And so I'm just thinking, for parents who, like, could a parent come to you who was having these moments of their child was having those moments of psychosis and do an appointment, telehealth, or would you absolutely need to see the child in person?
No, I don't. Actually, most of my consults are online.
Yeah.
And
Right.
I have clients all over the world, so that works. But no, because often it's very stressful to bring a
Mhm.
child like that into a room, and
Mhm.
I can't get the information I need, and the parent will be distracted, and the child could be very well distressed. So,
Yes.
and I had like if a parent really wants to come and bring their child, I'm more than happy to do that. But the initial consult in particular is not with a child there, because I
Mhm.
need to go through the whole history. I want to know about the pregnancy, even just before the pregnancy, and I want to know about the family history. And there's sometimes sensitive things that the parent can't talk about in front of the child. What
Of
I will
course.
do, though, is get the parent to send a video of certain behaviours. If they can, I get them to send a photo of the child.
Mhm.
And I really dig down into behaviours too, because each child, like even stims, like each
Yeah.
autistic child will have their own specific stim, and that could lead me to a remedy that child needs. So, I really kind of dig into those things and see the patterns, and without actually having to see the child.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, okay, that's good to know for parents because, like you said, it can be really overwhelming, and so
yeah,
parents might turn around and say, "Well, look, I'm not even gonna bother because I
yeah,
can't physically get my child in the car," not
yeah,
realizing that this is actually an option to do a telehealth.
yeah.
For listeners that are listening that may not know, can you explain, and I know that you explained it a little bit before, but explain what PANS and PANDAS are? Like what does that mean? Because some people who are listening are at the beginning of their journey and have no idea what even neurotypical or neurodivergent mean. So all these new terms are coming up. So just share with us a little bit more about that.
So PANDAS was found first, I guess, discovered first or realized first. And that was by a doctor in America called Susan Suedo. And she found that these children presenting with neuropsychiatric symptoms such as tics, OCD, ritualistic behavior, severe anxiety, actually were affected by strep. So strep as an illness.
Yep.
And there would often be a family history, and there's a few other kind of details. So she found, rather than, because often we relate to these behavioral issues as, oh, there must be trauma in the family or something must have happened. But much of the time, or we could think of it, of course, that does, trauma obviously does play a part or whatever, but these kids it could be sudden onset and the next day they wake up and they can't stop washing their hands, kind of thing. So that OCD. So then she started working with strep, but then also discovered that our children's immune systems could be affected by a virus or any pathogen. And that's what PANS is. So PANS stands for Pediatric Acute Onset Neuropsychiatric Syndrome. So it can be quite strong and it can be sudden onset, but it can also creep up. And I see a lot of kids where just creeps in, where there might be a couple of incidents where they got sick when they were younger and then they were really fearful during that illness. Or that they were, suddenly they were having to do things in a really specific way and they wouldn't budge, like real rigidity. It can show up like that too. And of course we can see a crossover with autism there too. With that rigidity and how things are done.
Yeah.
That's why, like I've worked with many autistic children, we're actually also working with these pathogens, because we do clear these pathogens with homeopathy. And really we're changing the body's relationship, because again, we have these pathogens in us all the time. We have strep in us all the time, but it shouldn't be causing such an issue. It's just that this disordered immune system has happened for whatever reason, and it doesn't know how to recognize and have a normal immune response anymore. So it's having these neuropsychiatric symptoms come forward.
Yeah,
so
right.
It's about being a brain that's being inflamed, for that reason.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, that's a lot for parents to take in, especially if it's it's a quick onset and you've just woken up and all of a sudden something's completely changed and you don't even understand what's going on. So having this information is so important so that parents can see. I would suspect, and look, don't quote me on this, but I would suspect that maybe you might go to the GP and they might not know about PANS or PANDAS, right? To the degree that you would know. So having this information, this is why I love my podcast so much. I love being able to talk to parents and to experts and parents, just to be like, this is what it is. And so if you're listening and you're like, hang on, I'm not sure if what's happening to my child, you can reference this and be like, okay, cool. Now I can go see Sarah. We can get this sorted, right? This is not just like because it can feel very overwhelming and like that there's no light at the end of the tunnel, right?
Right. And nobody understands you, because my son, who's nearly 21, he had PANS, and I was going to all sorts, and this was before it was really, really well, it's not well known now, but before it was known. And, I was even going to homeopaths. This is why I wanted to specialize in this as well, because they would give a remedy and kind of get better, but then he'd revert because they weren't actually addressing the cause, which was, for him, strep and other things, Lyme co-infections and mold and whatever, all the things, that wasn't being addressed. And so, you do feel like you're going crazy, because it's just like, and I went to psychiatrists. I did all of it, and they were like, no, there's nothing wrong. Because actually he was quite capable socially and he could show up in a room and be okay. It was just what was happening at home.
Yes.
That, very concerning. Like, I'm going to kill myself, like all of those things that were happening, and it's incredibly like confusing, I think, as a parent, when you're trying to seek help and nobody seems to know how to help you. And they even, I've had parents say terrible things that the doctors have said to them about, their child or their parenting, actually, like it's almost like their fault. Like, and that kills me, like, every time. because
It does.
yeah,
Go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
yeah. That was my experience too. It was
Yeah.
just it's like being gaslighted or something it's something that you're doing wrong
Yes.
as a
And I
parent.
feel like, haven't we already done that back in the 50s, right? Back
Yeah.
when, autism was just coming out and parents were being told that it was your fault, that it was your parenting that was causing this autism,
Yeah.
right? And
Uh-huh.
we just know that that is just not the case. So, like, let's
Mhm.
just look at it from what it is. And this is where I really say to a lot of people, trust your instinct. Like, if you are seeing something and your gut is saying to you, we need to check this out, believe that gut, believe that inner voice, because the doctor might say something, someone else might say something, but if you just find the right strategy, and sometimes that's hard to find, trying to find the right person can take a moment, right? It's
Mhm.
not just suddenly just going to fall from the sky and you're like, oh, this is who I'm going to go speak to today. So
Mhm.
this is why it's important to have these conversations with people to be like, okay, this is it. Can you help me? Is this
Yeah.
something that you can do? Um, when do you think, or who do you think should be seeking out homeopathic treatment? Is it just for autism and for children who are autistic and have PANS and PANDAS, or is it something else completely?
Oh, I mean, anything. I mean, another area that I have specialized in is working with women's hormonal complaints because it's just
Mhm.
brilliant for that
Yeah.
as well. But I mean, I specialize in children because that's my passion. But we can work with acute illnesses beautifully with and being able to avoid steroids and antibiotics.
Mhm.
It's a wonderful tool to have at home. Like if your child gets a fever, like to have an option to give a remedy as opposed to Panadol or Nurofen.
Yep.
If you feel like you're giving those things all the time, well, that's actually quite counterintuitive, and actually, it's not great for the gut microbiome to be
Mhm.
doing that. Not that you shouldn't do that when you need to do it, and of course, antibiotics the same when you need to. But a lot of the time, if we're going back to that disordered immune system, all of those inputs as well that are mostly what we know as go-tos because we don't get given the tools
Mhm.
can, have caused kind of or are contributing to that disordered immune system. So
Mhm.
just to have some other options. We have one of the homeopaths who works on my team teaches first aid courses as
Mhm.
well, so that parents can go, oh, okay, homeopathic first aid. So,
Yes. Yeah.
this you could give this remedy if your kid's got a fever. You could give it this, every half an hour or whatever. And if that one doesn't work, you can give that one. And if you're seeing these signs, maybe you want to go to the emergency room.
Yeah.
So just that kind of skill is
Because who are you calling at midnight when your child is puking their guts up, or just like has a God
yeah,
knows how high fever, a 40-degree fever? Like it's a
yeah,
lot. So having that, in your back pocket would
yeah,
definitely be a go-to thing.
yeah.
Yeah, I love homeopathy because I feel like it's an untapped resource, right?
Mhm,
It's
mhm.
this whole thing about, if you look back in the day, back in the ages, back when our elders were out there, right?
Yeah,
They weren't given Panadol and Nurofen. They were giving these treatments that they had created themselves to heal themselves and to heal their children, and that is why it's so powerful.
yeah,
And we've just look, if that this is the reality. The world has gotten so busy, and we are so busy that we don't have enough time to look after ourselves. So then
yeah, yeah,
how do we possibly look after our children? So
yeah,
it's a lot.
yeah.
Where can people find you if they wanted to book in for an assessment, or book in an appointment, either whether it's for autism or PANS and PANDAS?
So through my website, thefamilyapothecary.com.au, I mean, I have an Instagram page, which you've referenced to as well, and also I have a clinic in the US that I co-founded with another, which is also a clinic that specializes in working with complex pediatric cases. I mean, from both my clinics, we see people all around the world, and
Mhm.
that's homeopathyhive.com. So there's all of those avenues that you
Yep.
can, and I have in both of these businesses, I have a team of practitioners that I'm mentoring and working with them, and overseeing cases and all of that kind of thing too. So, but there's an amazing group of practitioners with a lot of passion in both of these clinics. So it's awesome because there's a lot of kids to help more and
Oh
more.
gosh, there so is. And so is the American clinic, is that under a different Instagram and Facebook page names?
Actually, we don't have it. We've only got the website. We do have an Instagram, but we haven't really populated it yet. We're actually really busy.
Yes, I can
even
imagine. I can imagine. Yeah. And
yeah.
so for people that are listening past this live, what are the Facebook and Instagram pages that people could go to and have a look?
So Instagram is _family_apothecary.
Mm-hmm.
I also have my own Instagram, which I post just some of my individual stuff. Sarah Valentini _homeopathy, I think, or is it homeopath? It's something like that. You should be able to find it.
I'll list it in the show notes. That's fine.
Yeah, and there is a Facebook page, the Family Apothecary. I think it's for families or something. I will send that information through too.
No, that's fine. That's perfect. Okay. All right. Now we are ready for our rapid fire questions. So are you ready? Okay. How has your perspective on autism changed over the years?
Yeah, so I guess, like from going to have, I guess in the beginning, before my son was born, if I heard about autism, it would be an idea of quite an extreme case. And, perhaps nonverbal in their own world, or, not functioning, that kind of thing. But what my experience now is that it's there is a whole spectrum. And from my son who's level 1 autism, like you wouldn't really know, but he definitely has sensitivities. My other perspective is that, like, more and more, I mean, I just feel so connected to the beautiful nature of these children and what they're showing us, in our world, in the way that they do things differently.
Yeah.
It's actually beautiful, and it's actually okay. And it's
Yeah.
actually, I think it's, in some ways, I think it's almost like taking us into the next level of consciousness, if we want to get right out there.
Yes, I'm here for the woo. I'm here.
Love it. Love it.
I love it. It's true. It is so true.
Yeah. And then they have the challenges, which, because, some people say, oh, well, you don't need to cure autism. And I don't believe you need to cure autism, but we want these kids to be their best selves. We want them to be able to go outside and enjoy, just being with their family and perhaps other people around and all of those things. We don't want them to have to hide away because it's all too much.
Yeah, right. You wouldn't want someone to be able to not be able to experience the world because they're in pain. Why wouldn't you want to address that? It's not about changing the autism and changing who they are and just making them feel comfortable, right? So that their inner essence can shine through, and that's what we're looking for. Yeah. What's one piece of advice that you'd give to parents who are starting on this journey?
Yes. So it's interesting because it's going to be a shock, I think. And a lot of people really develop and get really fixed on, I need to fix this in my child. I need to, and even though I totally understand that, and there's all of these kind of offerings that we can help you fix it, it's also really important to embrace the beautiful side of your child, and that can be challenging at times, especially if you're not getting that kind of reciprocity and feedback and eye contact and, whatever it is. But there is a beautiful part in there, and you will find it if you just keep the intention there. And of course, like you said before, look after yourself as a parent, oxygen mask on.
Yes.
You can't break down. And I did read somewhere recently about having a child with autism is akin to a soldier going to war.
Yes.
Right. So you need to look after your nervous system.
Yep. Yeah, definitely. Those cortisol levels are not going down, right?
No.
Those stress levels are skyrocketing. And if you're not looking after yourself, a common cold is going to come over and it is going to obliterate you into you're going to, I say it because I had firsthand experience, right?
Yes,
I still remember being in my bed, calling my best friend saying, I'm going to die. Like, I'm not coping. Like, I was so sick because my immune system had there was nothing left. And that's what happens with stress, because your immune system goes so low because it's just trying to keep up with everything. So you all know, you know all of this, but
Yes, yes, yes. Yeah, that's right. That's exactly right. And so, finding the resources somehow. I did
yeah.
a podcast with someone the other day, and they were saying, you just need to be able to take a break. Sometimes with complex children like this, you can't take a break,
Yep.
but can you take a breath?
Mhm.
Can you take a few breaths? Can you
Mhm.
just sit and take a few breaths, even if it's like 2 minutes,
Yep.
and just bring it back down to, okay, I'm just going to
Yep.
regulate myself. And of
Yeah.
course, having people, which is also one of the really beautiful things that you offer, Nat, is like having community, having people that understand
Mhm.
around you is also such a gift and so important.
So important. Oh my gosh, community is everything. Because if
Mhm,
you feel like you're doing it alone,
mhm.
mate, you will go insane. Like you
Yes,
will just feel like you can't live like that. It's just impossible. But can I just say one quick
yeah,
thing before we keep going on this the
yeah.
rapid fire questions is Navy SEALs, right?
Mm,
The elite of the elite in terms of being sent out to war
mm,
are taught box breathing because they can't sit and meditate while they're having, gunfire shot at them, right?
right.
They have to use that box breathing in order to regulate their systems when things get really hard. So
Mhm.
just like I was saying before, where sometimes you can't like leave the house because you have a complex child, do that box breathing, right? That
Yeah,
holding in for four, breathing in for four, holding for four, breathing out for four, holding for four. And just that box, right? That doing that action just reminds your nervous system that no, you are not going to be attacked by a tiger, that you do
yeah.
not need to run away and it's going to be okay. So just for people listening, please practice that box breathing. It's really worthwhile.
Love
So
it. Yes,
yeah.
absolutely. Yes.
Yeah. All right. What's one tool or resource do you think that every parent should have?
Uh, I mean, probably like access to you and like you like, well, something like this
Yeah.
actually. What
Yeah.
I just that, yeah, the team of people that understand, or the
Yeah. Thank
community
you.
that understands,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
that
Definitely.
is like, that's invaluable, really.
Yes. Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Um, what is a mantra or a quote that you live by?
Oh, this is a good one. So I guess like personally, I always will, like, if I'm making a decision to do something, I always make sure it's for my highest good.
Hmm.
So I'm generally pretty centered on uh, staying the focus on that, and sometimes that requires me to look out the window. We live in a beautiful place outside of Melbourne, and like just to remember that Mother Earth has got me.
Yes. Yeah.
So, it's almost like that, like living to what is true for me. And that's,
What
of
is?
course, that's something that I've, honed and worked with over years. Um,
Yep.
so the actual mantra, I don't know what the mantra would be, but it's like that, you
Yep.
know.
Yep. So just knowing essentially what is the perfect environment for you to really thrive, right? What
Yeah,
does that look like for you?
that's right. And
Yep.
when I get a yes on it's that, and when I get a no on that, I go with the yes. Like
Yep.
I don't go, oh well, but maybe I should. I
Yep.
generally don't do that. I generally go with the yes.
Yes, yeah, and you'll know the yes because it'll
Yeah,
feel good in your body, right?
exactly.
As opposed to that, even if it's the slightest pushback, that feeling like, "Oh, I don't really know
Yeah,
about that." That's your body saying, "Nope, this isn't it. But if it
yeah,
lights up from the inside, that is you and your body saying, "Yes, this is it."
absolutely. And it comes back to that, and even like for your child, like choosing what therapies or whatever you want to choose. Like
Mhm.
even that, like I had a client this morning, a mother, and she was just like, I've got all the therapies and I'm doing all this diet, and she's totally overwrought and overrun.
Yeah,
And so
yeah,
it was just bring it back. He's going to be okay if you drop things for a bit,
yeah.
and
Yes, yes,
takes, like, okay, and then reassess and go, what's important for me? What do I think right now? Because that mother instinct is the most important thing here. And it can be hard to hear that because with children with these diagnoses, it can be hard to kind of hear that. But just, bit by bit, remember
yeah,
it, remember it's there, and just
yeah.
go with it. and
Yes.
try it and be with it.
Far too often, Sarah, what happens is you go into a diagnosis, and then what happens? You go into full masculine mode, and then the feminine energy just goes poof, and it just goes right out the door. And then it's not until you can really start stepping back and really start thinking about that the feminine energy will come back in. But it's the feminine energy that's the intuitive, right? We need that in order to read the room and read our child and see what they need. And without that, it's almost like walking into a field with no compass, going, which way do I go now?
Yeah,
Right.
right.
So we need to tap into that feminine. Oh my gosh, so much.
Absolutely. Yes.
Um, all right, last question. If you could go back in time, what would you tell yourself, either for yourself as a parent of an autistic of autistic children, or for parents? What would you say to them? Like, what would you want to say that is so profound that you think that every parent should know?
So I do think it's like remembering to embrace that beautiful thing about your child,
Yeah.
because we can get really caught up in all of the and that manager mode, that masculine that you're talking about, and we can
Yeah.
get so caught up in doing that and trying to fix it and getting my child away from that diagnosis. And
Mhm.
like it's almost like polarizing, like I just have to do everything to save my child from that diagnosis. But
Yeah.
a lot of the time that we can actually, when we surrender and can just unconditionally love the situation, which is challenging. I'm going to acknowledge that.
Yeah.
But if we can just like unconditionally love, then
Mhm.
that's so incredibly powerful
Yeah.
for our child, for us, and even for our connection and that intuition, like to get that to come forward.
Mhm.
So, I think, in terms of my journey, especially with my oldest son, I did follow my intuition. It was hard. It was like this because like, no, like nobody could work out what was going on with him, or they just thought there was nothing or whatever. And I had to stay. And there were times I was just like, oh, well, I don't know, I guess it's fine.
Yep.
And there were times I was like, no, it's really not fine. Um,
Yes.
so it was, I guess comes back to that thing too of like just being like really like, as the parent, and then you find the people, or you somehow draw the people in that can support you in the way that
Yeah.
you want to be supported.
Yes, absolutely. I love that. Okay, so just before we wrap up, just give out the website address again.
www, I guess I don't need to say that, do I? Thefamilyapothecary.com.au, and
Yeah,
then, homeopathyhive.com.
perfect. All right, lovely. Thank you so much for joining me. I've
Thanks.
so appreciated this conversation.
Thank
And
you.
guys, if you're not sure, if you want to reach out to Sarah, she does offer a free consult, a 15-minute consultation. Is that right?
The other practitioners who work with me do. So you can have a chat with one
Yes,
of the
good.
practitioners and see how you feel and see how they would approach the case and all of that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. Lovely. Thank you so much, Sarah.
Yeah.
I will talk to you soon. Take
Thanks
care.
so much. Bye.
Bye.